Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov gang. Our tough and intellectual and streetwise gang members this evening are Paul Croshaw, a filmmaker and the director and producer of the new documentary Baseball, Dennis and the French, starring Dennis Prager. Mike Finch, the chief operating officer of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And Dwight Schultz, who played Murdoch on NBC's The A-Team. Gentlemen, welcome to the Glazov gang.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Dwight, Mike, and Paul are new members of the gang. Tell them the rule about the gang.
Oh, please, come on, don't do this to me. I don't know any rules. No, you have to tell them. You're the head of the gang.
Are you going to help?
I don't know
Are you
the
going to help
rules.
me with it?
You're the veteran.
Come on.
Do it.
You're like Paul Lynn. Okay, you know the ropes. You're in the middle.
I can't.
You're the middle
do
square.
it. I'm not
Gentlemen,
gonna do it. No, it's the wrong thing.
Gentlemen, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. That's the rule about the Glazov gang.
All right.
From Hotel California, okay? Gentlemen, let us begin. And I think the best thing to do is to start with you, Paul Croshaw. It's an honor to have you here. You were at one time an agnostic liberal, I think it's fair to say.
Yes, I was.
And yet, listening to Dennis Prager on the radio, you had an intellectual and spiritual journey, and you ended up being the producer and director of this new DVD. Tell us a bit about your journey and how you...
Yeah, I was driving to a Michael Dukakis rally, and I was looking for Dodger Talk on the radio, and I stumbled upon Dennis Prager, and he was talking about God. And I said, how could they let a guy on a major radio station talk about God on the radio? It's not the end of the dial, it's right in the middle, KABC. And but what it did was it jarred a memory from when I was a kid, 12 years old on a Little League field. I hit a home run in a miraculous miracle way. And so I started to listen to Dennis off and on, and I generally disagreed with most of what he said. One time he talked about the Soviet Union being an evil empire, and Dennis agreed with that, or Reagan said it, and Dennis agreed with it. I thought, how can you say that about a world leader, a major country, call it an evil empire? But the more I thought about it and the more I heard Dennis, I came to realize, my God, he's right. He's right about a lot of things. But it took me 12 years to make that transition. And it was really painful, actually, because as you know, being on the left, it was everything about me. I would be the guy in the office annoying everybody at work, the know-it-all 20-something kid. And I heard this grown-up talking about conservative values, what America was all about, God, why that's the foundation of liberty and everything that's about America. And so I changed. And I made this movie because my relatives, my fellow comrades in arms, are just baffled by it all, absolutely baffled. And I couldn't unpack this story. It was too big. I couldn't corner my uncle, in the kitchen during Thanksgiving and unpack this story. I've tried. We all have tried. We can't do it. So I said, I'll make a movie. Let Dennis do the talking. So I made it.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being with me. My name is Dennis Prager. When I was at graduate school, I learned a lot of very foolish and sometimes foolishly dangerous things. You know why there was so little wisdom at Columbia? Because there was no God in Columbia. That explained everything. People don't realize we have a secular brainwash in our society. People who say, I can't believe in God after the Holocaust. Do you believe in humanity after the Holocaust? It's one thing to say, I'm pissed off at God, and it's quite another to say, I don't believe he exists.
Like you somehow condensed into matter, and the matter became alive.
Purely rational level, there's no question that there is a God. I want to take argument by argument. This is the most important question in life. Is there a God? So what am I going to believe in? The UN?
And in some ways, it's a carbon copy of Whittaker Chambers' Witness. I mean, I'm just saying that it's also a transition of sorts, right?
Dennis Prager is my radio guy, but my book guy, the first book that really hit me in the gut was Whittaker Chambers' Witness. And then I just learned 4 or 5 years ago it was Ronald Reagan's favorite book. And I go, wow, that makes sense. And I was not a Reagan fan. I didn't get it because I was in that lefty zone. So it took me a long time to appreciate what Ronald Reagan was all about.
Paul, were you a brain dead liberal, excuse me for saying that, or were you like a radical leftist, very committed?
No, I wasn't. I wouldn't say a leftist.
Yeah.
I was just on the left. I was constantly thinking about how do we solve these get poor people to work, or how do we get this neighborhood to look better? You know, do we put clinics on every corner? Do we have almost like housemaids, checking in on people? In other words, I wanted to control society, instead of just leaving people alone.
Right.
I didn't understand that concept, and what made me really mad is when I learned these conservative ideas. Is no one told me this stuff. My sister Robin has a political science degree from USC. It's not Berkeley. She never heard of Burke. She never heard of Russell Kirk. Barely heard of William F. Buckley. No way Whittaker Chambers. And she felt like she was robbed. How come she was not taught this stuff? Well, so I first heard these ideas, I felt like I was robbed. Here we are, some hip, cool guys in the cafes talking about these big issues and things, acting like we know about it, because we talk about it all the time. We read the papers. We didn't know what we were talking about. We knew nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Because the left controls our boundaries of discourse. It controls the higher literary culture, our mainstream media. None of this really gets out. Before we go to our other two wise men, tell our viewers about the DVD and where they can find it today.
You go to baseballdennisandthefrench.com. You type it once, I'm sure the computer will remember it.
Why Baseball Dennis and the French?
Well, baseball goes back to the miracle. My last at bat, my last year in Little League was full count. I told everybody it was going to happen because I prayed that I would do it. It was a deal I made with God, but I reneged on my deal. And it's all dramatized in the thing. But I hit it.
Wow.
It's an incredible story.
This is sort of like The Secret. You envision it and then it happens. Okay.
Well, actually, my co-writer, who actually teaches writing at USC, and he's kind of an amateur theologian, he said, don't you realize that your miracle matches the Catholic catechism, blah, 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 of a miracle? I said, well, what do you mean? He says, you asked for it, you foretold it, you had the disappointment of Christ on the cross. I actually hit the ball off the handle part of the bat, and I put my head down and said, oh, I said a bad word. I popped it up.
What letter did the word start with?
S. Okay. I said, oh, no. I popped it up, and I felt all hope drain out of my body. There's no Santa Claus. There's no Easter Bunny. It is what it is. But I looked up, and the ball just kept on going. And the whole point is I was a small, skinny, scrawny kid, And so as I jogged around first base in my cocky junior high way, all the dads were lined up against the fence. They told you so. Just kept on running around the base. So it was a great day. But I made a deal with God.
Oh,
and
you know what?
On the deal. I didn't know.
Did you ever think about maybe being a pastor? Because you could really rile some people up. Okay.
No, I'm a horrible speaker. I'm a horrible writer. But I've told the story so many times.
Okay, so we get the baseball now.
Yes.
We understand,
French.
Dennis. Why the French?
I was a weird kid, as you can guess.
I would never guess that.
I love French films.
You like French films? That's weird.
I thought they were wacky. I thought they were clever.
And that's why you were a leftist.
That's right. And so I understood. And then you hear these long monologues, these 10-minute monologues, these French movies of them panning the city, and they talk about these things. And oh, I feel so depressed. My girlfriend's left me. What is life? And I go, wow, this is great. And
okay.
I watch it now. It's nonsense.
Fantastic. Baseball, Dennis, and the French. Gentlemen, I'm having such a great time talking to Paul. Do you mind if I continue talking to him and you guys can just observe the...
I want to hear more about the French. Yeah.
Dwight, let us move on to you. Are you inspired by this story? Tell us a little bit about the feelings that you think about Paul's intellectual journey, and then maybe touch a little bit on your own journey, if you had some second thoughts, or how you arrived at your faith.
Well, I mean, I've been a Dennis Prager. I've always been a conservative, which is one thing. Always a conservative when my family was mostly liberal.
That's really unusual.
Well,
he was a weird kid.
Yeah.
He was a weird kid too. Yeah.
But I was very fortunate, as I've said before. I was when I was a freshman in high school, I met a refugee from Hungary from the Revolution in '56, and he was going to become the husband of a friend of mine's sister, and many discussions we had
There
about the war, and I would take what I would see and compare it to what I was hearing in school, and I just formed a different point of view about the world.
Were you unpopular because of that?
No, not back then.
Okay.
In college, when I got to college, I was.
Okay.
Because there was the Vietnam War was on, and I was told by one of my professors, "You are the reason they are killing babies now in Vietnam." And I was doing a Bertolt Brecht's "A Man's a Man," and behind us were pictures of the Vietnam War. And the director said, "Man, don't you want to stand? Don't you want to stand? It's pitchforks and knives against tanks and flamethrowers." And I said, "That's not exactly what it is." And it was that was the beginning of the terrors of the left, personally. But Dennis Prager, the first time I heard Dennis Prager on Religion on the Line, I said, "Oh, this guy, I thought he was much older than me. Much older than me."
Right.
He sounded so...
Because he was wiser?
Yes!
He's your
He
father
was so
figure,
wise.
yeah.
When I found out I was older than him, I went, "Ah!"
Yeah.
But I listened to him for years and years, and he's one of those extraordinary voices. I mean, how he maintains his cool, I couldn't do it.
Well, what's amazing to me about Dennis is that, he really is like the Michael Jordan or the Tiger Woods or of what he does. And I wanted more people to hear him. I wanted to put him on the big screen and say, "Look at this guy. He's exceptional. He's unique. He's a powerhouse."
Yes,
more people should know about him.
Yeah.
Michael Finch, you have stoically and nobly been very silent. Your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, Dennis Prager is more uplifting than Dodger baseball, so I'm glad you tuned into Dennis that night.
Well, I would go to sleep to Dodger baseball many times.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's interesting. You mentioned you had a Hungarian friend. I never had a transformation. I kind of got it early, and I was in a class in high school, and sitting next to me was a guy from Albania, recent immigrant from Albania. Most people didn't even know where Albania was, but he gave me a worn copy of the Gulag Archipelago. I read that before Witness, and I got it right away. I mean, there wasn't, I didn't have to go through any kind of, it was just obvious.
Did you go to graduate school?
No, and this was high school, and then I was in the service, went to college later, had the same experience. I had Marxist professors berate me.
But once you read Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago,
there's nothing else to,
Did you read the Communist Manifesto in high school?
No.
I did. And it was funny. Yes, it's hysterically funny. Of course, people say, "Oh, it's just a translation." I say, no, it's the ideas. It's just, you laughed out loud at it.
And how it's changed millions. It's unbelievable.
And you think it can't possibly. But then you see Khrushchev take off his shoe. You see Castro boil chickens in a hotel.
Yeah.
You see Arafat take guns to the United Nations, and you say, that's it.
Yeah, I had a professor in college in Russian studies who said Solzhenitsyn's a good fiction writer, but you cannot read him as history. That it's all myth and theory, but none of this is fact. That's right. This was a Russian.
I've heard that a lot though about teachers telling their kids that. There was a German kid at this office I worked at. A kid was in his late 20s. He was a stockbroker, and he said no when his name was Gerhard, or it was a German name of some kind. And he said, "No, a professor called me a Nazi once." Yeah. I was going, "Wow." I was a lefty. I wouldn't call you a Nazi, but
Mike, a few of your thoughts on Prager.
Well,
and this important documentary.
I want to see the film. That's for sure. I watched a trailer today. But the one thing about Prager is he's the one, probably the only radio talk show personality who can actually change hearts. Because he has a certain style. He takes very complicated theological, moral, and ethical issues and distills it so it's very easy to understand, much easier to understand than French films.
Yes.
But I think if more people could listen to Prager, we talked about this, if more people could read a certain book, Stanley Kurtz's book, if more people could hear Prager, I think he could change a lot of hearts.
Absolutely. And just a simple Pragerism is, where does liberty come from?
Right.
Does it come from your genes, nature? It comes from God. If it doesn't come from God, it's worthless. And just those little things like, where does good and evil come from? How do you know what is good? And if you can't answer those questions, I couldn't answer those questions.
But what a
tackle them, right?
what a
You need to tackle
fundamental ignorance and misunderstanding in our culture, because when these leftists try to argue and try to minimize Islam, they say, oh, the Christians and these fascists and stuff. But if we know about the Judeo-Christian tradition and the respect that it gave to the individual, and how much God in our Judeo-Christian tradition, how much He loved the individual and gave the individual his rights, we have our liberties because of Christianity.
And you know the two. I mean, he has Pragertopia, which is remarkable thing.
Yeah.
And if you, and he always says if you are searching for the ultimate answers, and you know as a human being, you don't have them, but you're searching for them. You are alive in some way that those who have said there is no God, it's dead.
Yeah.
So there is something, and Thomas Aquinas had this too. There are all of these clues in front of you, and that's what Dennis does. He forces you to search your mind and what you see. Don't take things just as they're thrown at you, but you're looking for answers. And life is a journey about using your mind. And then there are these people who say, no, that's it. There's nothing. He says that very well. Nothing, and it's a.
You gotta face that.
Yes.
There's nothing. You are worthless. You'll be a rock
Right.
after you're dead, and your kids will be dust shortly too.
Right.
Mike, for you, in terms of these themes, because it's interesting that we mentioned Witness, Whittaker Chambers, because conservatism, rejection of communism, but also faith and God, and that's very much pronounced in your journey and what you're saying. Do you see an interconnection here between conservatism and also faith?
Well, of course. I mean, the one thing that stands out in Chambers' book is, even though in the 80s and 90s we felt like we had overcome this, is that he was going from the winning side to the losing side. That the idea of faith and Christianity and God, the Judeo-Christian ethic, represents the losing side. Marx's great achievement, forget communism, that's a disaster, is the demonization of religion. I think, and since then,
Absolutely.
I mean, it started before then, but the demonization of Christianity and Orthodox Judaism, I think, started with Marx, and that's, is that the winning side? Is the secular world, which is now allied with Islam, as you've written about, Jamie?
But if Islam is waging a spiritual battle as well, how can we win if we reject as a society our spirituality?
Well, we can't.
Right?
If that side, if the West is represented by the secular left, then we lose. There's no way we can win.
Gentlemen, all good things must come to an end. We have come to the end of our first segment. 20 seconds from each of you. Paul, let me begin with you. Talk a little bit about what you wish that this DVD will achieve and whether it did achieve it.
Yes, it presents Dennis's ideas about God and the consequences to America if we become a secularized country in a very clear way. I want people to buy at least 2 copies of the DVD, so they give that one to their liberal friend or relative, or kids that go to college.
But that's kind of like throwing holy water on a possessed person.
No, it does change lives.
No, of course, as does an exorcism, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, I agree with you.
That's what I meant by that.
Yes.
Right? Okay, Dwight?
Well, with Dennis, I can't think of a more extraordinarily philosophical voice and a real intellectual on the radio than Dennis. And this has to be, it must be seen by everybody. But it's...
Yeah, thank you.
Final words of wisdom to the Buddha of knowledge at the David Horowitz Freedom Center, Mike Finch.
I would open it up. I would love to. I know we have to finish the first segment. I'd want to know is can we win? I mean, can the ideas of faith triumph over?
Well, I'm thinking like Whittaker Chambers now. I feel pretty blue, but we have to keep fighting.
Let's begin that in the second segment. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining this first segment. Baseball, Dennis, and the French, starring Dennis Prager. Get it? And I think I'll end with this, that with the Obama victory, myself, my parents coming from the Soviet Union, it's hard not to feel despair at the moment. We see a ship quickly sinking, a lot of indifference in our society, but we see a titan like Dennis Prager making such a profound impact. And I guess we would just say on behalf of the Glazov gang, thank you very much, Dennis Prager, for everything that you do. We'll see you tomorrow night for the second segment of the Glazov gang.